first band. So if we have a good night, it totally depends on how we get on together on stage and the way the building sounds or the venue sounds and what the kids are like. So you never know exactly what it's going to be like every night.
How do you feel the tour has changed over the last couple of years?
Well, right now we don't have that big band that we were carrying around before. So, and we're doing an acoustic set. That's a big difference. The thing is like we did the show in Israel the other night, and Izzy was playing with us because Gilby broke his wrist. So that was interesting in itself. I think we're one of the first stadium bands who's replaced their replacement with the original guitar player, you know. And we went up there and we played pretty much like a club band. It was a small stage, and we were loose, and Izzy hadn't played with us in a long time, and basically had no idea what the set was like, and we didn't know what he was going to be like, and it was all pretty much spontaneous.
So what sort of cues do you take then? You're saying you're a spontaneous band.
I couldn't verbally explain that to you because it's a feeling that we have between the members of the band that we've just come, you know, we've grown over the years to sort of like without a word, maybe just a nod or maybe just a vibe to know what the other person's going to do. And so I couldn't say that there's any set way of communicating, no system whatsoever.
Hey everybody, what's going on, and welcome to Guns N' Roses Central. And today I want to do a true story episode about Izzy Stradlin returning to Guns N' Roses in 1993 when Guns N' Roses were on their Skin and Bones tour. So as you guys know, Izzy left the band in November of 1991, at least that's when it was officially announced. And then Gilby Clark came in, filled in for him pretty much through the rest of 91, 92, and most of 93. So Guns N' Roses were touring the U.S. back in the winter and spring of 1993. In addition to the shows in the U.S., Guns played a couple shows in Mexico. So following their shows in Mexico, Gilby Clark actually broke his wrist in a motorcycling accident. And Guns N' Roses still had 4 shows left on their U.S. tour. And they had to cancel those shows because they couldn't find a replacement in enough time. But what was also a jeopardy was the next leg of the tour where Guns N' Roses were going to be playing across the Middle East as well as Europe. So here's an interview with Gilby Clark around April, May of 1993 when he's on Headbangers Ball, and you can see the cast on his wrist.
Welcome back to the Headbangers Ball. It's my barbecue edition here with Gilby Clark of Guns N' Roses.
My party.
And we asked Kelly a question not too long ago with a very similar answer that we're going to ask Gilby. What happened to your arm there, Gilby?
Your bike.
I have the death motorcycle.
Death motorcycle.
The same motorcycle that Kelly broke his arm on.
I broke my wrist on
during this motocross race. See what happens? You get a bunch of rockers on dirt bikes, and Gilby's got the same experience as I do, Harley Davidsons, and then you put us on dirt bikes where we really don't belong.
We have no idea. We're sitting like way back, you know. It happened, I think, on the triple jump. If I was going up, I was doing 3 spins and stuff, and on the way down.
And so now you're hurt for a little bit.
Yeah, I'm out for a little
while. You're going to be better and back out on the road with Guns, right?
Yeah, I'm just going to miss a couple dates in Europe, and then I'll be back out.
Tell me when you're going to be back. Tell me when you're going to be back on the road with these guys.
I'm going to miss like 5 dates of Europe because we're going out in the middle of this month.
Okay, I have another question. Since it was my motorcycle and I sort of coerced you to do this race, is anybody pissed off at me?
Yeah.
Okay, I just
you notice I'm the only one here.
I did notice that.
Exactly.
Okay, well, good luck with everything, and I hope you feel better. And
good party.
Gilby will be back out on the road with Guns N' Roses, unless there's another race coming up, and then they'll be real mad at me. Right now, let's play a video from Slayer.
So with Gilby Clark injured, Guns N' Roses were in a bind. There was a lot of money that they were going to make on this Europe tour, and Axl had a big mortgage on his house that he had to pay off. So Slash talked about how they came up with the idea of Izzy coming back into the band. So in his book he said, then at the end of April, when we were back in LA, Gilby broke his wrist in a motorcycle accident. We weren't sure how bad it was until he showed up at a band meeting in a very serious looking cast. Wow, I said, that looks pretty bad. How long is it going to take to heal, Axl asked him. Gilby looked truly depressed, 2 to 3 weeks. F. I know, man, Gilby said, this effing sucks. We had a European tour booked starting with 2 dates in Russia, our first ever 2 weeks later. F it, Axl said, let's call Izzy. So here's the MTV News report from May of 1993 announcing that Izzy was going to be temporarily rejoining the band.
The Guns N' Roses guitarist who left that group in 1991 amid much recrimination is back on stage with the band, at least temporarily, pinch hitting for the guitarist who replaced him, Gilby Clark. Clark recently broke his fretting wrist in a motorcycle accident, so Guns frontman Raxel Rose put in a fence-bending call to Stradlin, who has a band of his own called the Juju Hounds, and persuaded him to rejoin for a few weeks to play some overseas dates. Meanwhile, 3 other members of Guns N' Roses, guitarist Slash, bassist Duff McKagan, and even the injured but still singing Gilby Clark joined Lemmy Kilmister of Motorhead and a variety of other hard rock musicians at the Hollywood Palladium in Los Angeles last weekend as the Drunk F Blank X. They played a fundraiser for a popular local tour manager named Fred Saunders, who recently broke nearly every major bone in his body in a motorcycle accident. Here's a look at the show.
So Slash talked a bit more about what it was like to have Izzy come back in the band in his book. Here's what he said. I was surprised and happy to hear that Izzy went for it, although I was completely confused to hear that Izzy didn't want to rehearse at all. Not that we had much time to anyways. As it turns out, the political situation in Russia in May of 1993 was too unstable for us to play Moscow, so we flew to Tel Aviv, Israel to rehearse with Izzy before we launched the tour there at Rehearsal Arena. We booked a rehearsal space studio in Tel Aviv, and it was a trip. This place was a recording studio, as well as I think the engineers didn't believe that the band booked was actually us until we walked through the door. We got together in this cheap old spot that was homey in a foreign way and run by these old people who were really cool. It was an average rehearsal space with mid-range recording equipment, and they'd clearly never seen anyone like us there before, so we totally blew them away, and for that reason alone, it was worth it. Izzy showed up with dreadlocks and hadn't practiced one song, so we did what we could. Now, if you guys want to see that rehearsal space, you guys can watch the Guns N' Roses documentary, Photographic History. That rehearsal space is shown at the very beginning, and you can actually see Izzy rehearsing with the band as well. Now, you guys may be wondering, why would Izzy just come back all of a sudden? And Izzy explained in an interview that the reason he came back was because Guns N' Roses owed him a lot of money, and they hadn't paid him that money since he left the band in 1991, so he cut a deal with them and said, you guys pay me the money I'm owed, and I'll come and help you guys out. The rumor I had heard is that they paid Izzy something like $1 million to come out and play those 5 shows with them, although I don't know if that's actually true or not. And in the same interview, Izzy talked about how he wanted to go see places that he'd never been before. And, you know, Izzy filled in for 5 dates. They played 5 dates in 4 countries, in Israel, Turkey, Greece, and Milton Keynes in England. So he thought, you know, Turkey, Israel, and Greece, places he'd never been before. He saw what a cool way to actually go see these places. So Slash talked a bit about the Israel gig. He said, we played to 50,000 people in Israel for the first time. He said, sadly, it was a pretty loose set because Izzy wasn't up to speed and hadn't been conscientious about practicing. The press criticized us pretty harshly, saying that we had used this opportunity as a warm-up date, which was not true at all. We wanted to be great, but with the rhythm guitarist who still was unfamiliar with material, there was only so much we could do. We did the gig. We hung out there for a couple days. We saw all the sights. He also talked about how him, Izzy, and Duff actually went to where Jesus was born, and they actually ate in the square around the Wailing Wall. Now, Axl had a rant back in 2002 at a gig in Boston about the same gig in Tel Aviv, Israel. Here's what Axl had to say about Izzy.
You know, I read something somewhere. Someone was writing an article about my other friends, and they wrote this thing about how, yes, and in the old days, you know, they used to have there was a lot of problems in the technical areas of the band. Izzy couldn't hear himself. The reason that Izzy couldn't hear himself, this isn't being mean, this was, is our roadies would stand behind Izzy's amps. Because Izzy would be so whacked out of his mind that he would basically be playing a different song in a different key. And the only way we could do the songs was every time he would go to his amps, he would turn his amps up and he would turn around to the crowd. When he would turn around to the crowd, the roadies would reach around and turn his amps back down so that we could play the song. That worked especially well in Tel Aviv. Just a little tidbit there for your Trivial Pursuit.
Now, there is some pro shop footage of the Israel concert, if you guys have ever seen that Grease special. I've linked to those down below if you guys want to check them out. So Duff McKagan also talked about having Izzy back in the band in 1993. He said crowds stopped the show for minutes on end to chant Izzy's name. It was great. Greek teenagers seemed to understand something we had lost track of to some extent. This was or had been first and foremost a band of friends who believed in our music and in one another. Izzy and I started out as neighbors who would take the city bus to get to a gig where we were the 4th band on the bill of 4 bands, just happy to be playing a gig with a band we believed in with everything we had, and we saw it through. Now I looked at Izzy and recognized the clarity he had, the sense of purpose behind his decisions. Izzy had his feet beneath him and could walk away, which he did again after those 5 shows. My feet felt stuck in cement or quicksand. I wanted what he had, but had no idea how to get it. Though I guess I didn't want sobriety badly enough to go to Izzy and ask him for help. That would have put me in a situation where I would have had to either follow through or fail. So following the gig in Israel, Guns N' Roses went to Greece, and Guns N' Roses actually filmed a special in Greece for MTV, and they talked a bit about Izzy returning to the band. So here's what Matt, Duff, and Slash had to say about it.
Myself, I've always kept friends with Izzy, and so it's really just like him stepping back in. It's okay, I mean, he's forgotten a few songs, but, you know, it's all right, you know, like, people know that he hasn't played with us for over 2 years, so they're not going to expect, you know, crystal clear, perfect, you know, sounds coming off the stage, because they definitely are not. Not just against Izzy, I mean, everybody, we've never been perfect.
Initially, the breakup when it first happened was kept under wraps. We've gotten so, you know, we go through those periods where everybody was used to living together or staying in the same hotel, that when we'd go home, we'd all live in different places. And I'd be busy doing my thing, completely obsessed with what the band is doing, and Axel would be doing his thing. Everybody, you know, so we wouldn't see each other that much. And so Izzy just really got farther and farther away from him. And that had been developing over years anyway. And when he quit, it was like it's such short notice. It was so close to the next leg of the tour. And he didn't call any of the guys in the band. He just called management and sent like a letter of resignation. So there was a lot of tension going on when all that finally came to light, that this was going on. And then having to find another guitar player and all that kind of stuff. And I think there was a bit of resentment for a while. And at this point, you know, I've known him for so long, I can't be mad at the guy. And it was great to see him. So it's, yeah, it's like I said, water under the bridge.
It feels good because, you know, when he left the band, it was a little weird. You know, I mean, it was for different reasons. He was feeling, you know, like he kind of wanted to do his own thing. And when we split, we really haven't really spoken to each other. You know, and I've spoken to him a few times, Stuff's spoken to him a few times, you know, but not like it used to be. So when he came back, at first when I saw him, it was a little strange. But once we got up on stage, it feels just like the old days. I look over him now, and it's like, wow, it's easy. It's kind of hippie, you know.
Do you think that it helped heal the wounds then, really?
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's helped heal the wounds to a lot of other people too. You know, a lot of people thought that we had a lot of conflict amongst us with Izzy and stuff, but that's not true. You know, and for him to come back, it's obviously, you know, it's cool, you know.
So Slash also had this to say about Izzy rejoining the band in 1993. He said, Izzy stayed out there with us for a while, all through Greece and Turkey, places we'd never been before. I didn't think much of it at the time, but Izzy was doing what he does best. He was checking out the situation, taking stock, observing everything, taking part while committing to nothing. He wanted to see what had changed and what hadn't. He was taking note of how much drinking was going on, what Axel's trip was. He was testing the water to see if he could deal with it. At the time, I still thought he'd quit the band because of the riot in St. Louis and the near riot in Germany. I didn't even realize that those incidents were the least of his concerns. He said Izzy remained on board until late May, ending his run with 2 shows at the National Bowl in Milton Keynes, England. Gilby flew out and hung out, and the 2 of them got along great. There was no drama as the baton was passed, thank God. And if you guys have seen any of the Making Effing Videos documentary, or I think it was the Photographic History, Gilby talks about how he's known Izzy for quite a while back to the club days. Now, following the dates in Milton Keynes, Gilby came back and was the rhythm guitarist for the rest of the tour, but Izzy did reflect on those 5 dates that he actually played with Guns N' Roses, and he basically said he left without saying goodbye. I didn't actually say see you because they were all effed up. Duff and these guys, they didn't even recognize me. It was really bizarre. It was like playing with zombies. Oh man, it was just horrible. Nobody was laughing anymore. And you could tell that things really ended badly between Izzy and Guns N' Roses when he left in 1993, because pretty much after every date that Gilby came back for, they dedicated Double Talk and Jive to Izzy, and there's plenty of video on YouTube for you guys to find it. And several months after the Use Your Illusion tour ended, Guns N' Roses had the spaghetti incident out, and they actually erased all of Izzy's parts and got Gilby to play on the album. And then Axl and Slash went on Rockline, and the topic of Izzy came up, and here's what they had to say. So a caller into the show said maybe Izzy would be brought back in to help record things. Is there any truth to that? Slash said nothing, no. Axl said none at all. Slash said especially not to help record things, to which Axl said never again, no, not at all. We brought Izzy back in Europe when Gilby had hurt his arm, and then we kind of got blackmailed, and we haven't. We really don't want to have anything to do with Izzy ever since then. And Slash said, in all honesty, it was cool to get him back when the idea came, and Axl said, and it was cool when he went away as well. So that does it for this episode of Guns N' Roses True Story. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. Did any of you guys see Izzy for those 5 dates? I wish I could find more information on the Turkey 93 show, but unfortunately there's just not that much info available.
Hey, this is Dizzy Reed from Guns N' Roses, and you're watching GNR Central. Yeah!